Why are Gulf Airlines on the rise? Well, to answer that question, I should probably tell you what the Gulf Airlines are. For those that don't know, the three main Gulf Airlines are Qatar Airways, Emirates, and Etihad Airways. Qatar Airways is based out of Doha, which is right here on the map in Qatar. Emirates is based out of Dubai, which is part of the United Arab Emirates, which is right here on the map. And Etihad Airways is based in Abu Dhabi, which is also in the United Arab Emirates, right here. This general region, that's the Middle East, and we'll get back to it geographically in a second. Now, the second question I want to answer is, what exactly do I mean by on the rise? Well, if you take a look at this chart right here, these are the passengers carried on international routes in 2013. If you take a look at the top, 12 here, you'll see some familiar names. You'll see European carriers such as Lufthansa in first, Air France in third, and British Airways in fourth. And then the U.S. carriers such as United, Delta, and American in fifth, sixth, and seventh position. But then if you take a closer look, you'll see the Gulf Airlines. Emirates actually came in second with 60 million passengers carried on international routes. Qatar came in 10th, and Etihad came in fourth at 7 million and 4 million passengers respectively. Now, why is it that these Gulf Airlines have risen so high in the rankings? Well, to answer that question, we have to look at geography. And here we go. Here's a map of the world, and I've spelled geography wrong, so let me correct that. Now, I circled the Middle East earlier, and I'm going to do it again here. Now, this is a flight route map for Emirates in 2012, so 2 years ago. But it kind of gives a good idea about the geographical advantage of the Gulf Airlines. To the northwest, they have Europe, and to the southeast, they have Southeast Asia. Shocker. From the looks of it, the Gulf Airlines have a geographic advantage. Let's explore that a bit more. And I'll look at three things specifically: range, travel time, and routes. So, if we consider range, the Middle East can basically fly to 2/3 of the world's population within an 8-hour flight. And if you're flying on an Airbus 380 or a Boeing 777, you can reach 90% of the world's population. So that's not too bad right there. Pretty good range from this little location. Second thing is time. A study done for large carriers kind of broke it down into 3 benchmark flight times. Basically, for large carriers, anything under 5 hours, passengers are better off going on budget airlines, and this isn't great value or very profitable for large carriers. Anything over 10 hours, and the fuel efficiency kind of goes away, and large carriers, lose out on profitability. The sweet spot for large carriers seems to be the 7-hour flight. It just so happens that all of Europe from the Middle East is within a 5 to 8 hour range, and most of Southeast Asia and Asia is the same. They're within this 5 to 8 hour range. So on range and time, the Middle East is quite attractive for large carriers. Now, when you look at routes, we'll consider first North America here, and to see what type of advantage the Middle East has when it comes to international flights. So here you have the East Coast of North America. And typically, in the past, when people want to fly from the East Coast to Asia, they would go through Europe. But actually now it makes much more sense to fly directly through the Middle East and then onto Asia. Similarly, in Europe, if you want to fly down to Asia or Australia, it makes a whole lot of sense to stop off in the Middle East and go forth to your destination. Thirdly, if you look at Northeast Asia here, so Japan, Korea, Northern China, you'll see what is known as a commodity route, which connects Northeast Asia to Africa and Latin America, obviously 2 huge commodity markets. And lo and behold, if you're traveling this route, look where the most convenient stop is. It's the Middle East. Finally, it doesn't really hurt for the Gulf Airlines that they're basically neighboring 2 enormous emerging markets in India. Sorry, that's a bad color. I'll do red here. In India to the east and Africa to the west. So clearly on a geographic front, these Gulf airlines in the Middle East have pretty significant advantages. Now, it's not that simple though, because if you actually look at the region, just because geographically there's an advantage, it doesn't mean that Iran's going to have a really good and prosperous international airline, or Yemen, or Saudi Arabia, or Kuwait for that matter. There are other reasons why. Right down here, between Qatar and the UAE, these three airlines have been so successful: Qatar, Emirates, and Etihad. We'll explore a bit more of why that is. So we'll scroll down a bit here. And no surprise here, the big reason why these three airlines have been so successful has to do with government support. The type of government support that the other countries in the Middle East has failed to provide, and not to mention there's a lot of instability in those other countries. So what do I mean by government support? We're talking subsidies here, whether it be really cheap loans or fuel subsidies from these oil-producing regions, or we're talking about laws such as a no minimum wage. So when the workers from India or Ethiopia or Bangladesh come, they basically get very usurious wages, non-livable wages, and we're talking no taxes. And finally, we're talking infrastructure. Here is Dubai's international airport, and here's Doha's international airport. These are both world-class airports. So these are kind of three government support mechanisms that, in combination with the geography, have really boosted the Gulf airlines. But in sum, though, it doesn't mean that everything's going to be gravy moving forward. There are clearly some risks, and a couple of them I've noted out here. The instability, as mentioned in the region. There's nothing stopping the unstable region from spilling over into Qatar or UAE. A drop in oil prices here that would take away some of this fuel subsidy advantage. And as more Boeing 787s or these longer passenger carriers come into play, the range advantage might be taken away. But as it stands right now, the Gulf airlines are very well placed, and that's just a quick explanation of how and why.